So I'm getting the deal Marshall. Yes, sir. Remember, sir. You want to sit here? You want to sit here? You what? What? Oh, okay. I got you. I heard. I got you. Beautiful day. Thank you. You here? What's up? Here, you sit here. You go with the camera. You need to stand with the camera.
Sure, I'll sit there.
There.
All of a sudden. We got Channel 4's main anchor last night with us today.
How you doing?
Did a good job last night.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, let's call this to order, and we will, I'm gonna find out what we're gonna do by looking at last month's meeting minutes. I have to look at this month's agenda. Stephanie? Here you go. You're up for the invocation, thank you.
Lord God, we ask you to be with us here today. We need you. We ask you to pour your grace into our hearts and guide our thoughts, words, and actions so that in all things we glorify you and nurture the bonds of our community. Continue to remind us that all that we're doing here today, all that we accomplish, is in pursuit of the truth for your greater glory of humanity. In your name we pray. Amen.
Okay, now, I need to look at the minutes for last meeting. Does anybody have any changes or anything to the draft of those?
Motion to approve.
Second, is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great. The Finance Committee met, and we have their meeting minutes, and we'll, where's Kim? You were waiting on me to call your name. I said, where's Kim? And then,
He was hoping the budget would be over.
you're up, buddy. Yeah, we were all the way up to your spot. I told you about wearing that bow tie. You wear it?
Now you make me feel important.
Yeah.
Hey,
When they say shoot the guy in the bow tie, you're up.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we have three things under the Finance Committee. The first is our operating budget. Then we got Christmas and use of contingency funds and compensation plan proposal. With some changes that were made for that plan. And first will be the operating budget, and Don can come in and explain that to us.
Did everybody get a copy of the, I know everybody got a copy of it, did everybody have that with them? And is there, I know the committee met, I'm not sure how many of you were here for that. I was there by phone, so I'm not sure who all was here. Yeah, yeah. Cure for insomnia is
I didn't say that, you said that.
yeah. So, anybody have any questions about the budget, proposed budget that wasn't addressed in the committee meeting?
I got a question that, was asked by Stephanie about, grant money part of the budget. Do we use any grant money? Do we apply for any grants? I didn't know we did or not either.
We're in the process of answering that question for her. The line she asked about was the federal aid line, and that we never budget anything in that line because we don't know what opportunities will present themselves. Most of that money comes via the state library, and we have the opportunity to apply for tuition assistance or continuing education or summer reading, and that's what those are for. And then we also include the E-rate reimbursement funds that we get that we're eligible to apply for in certain years. That's accounted for there too.
Okay. That's all. Okay.
Is E-rate still going?
Yes, it's changed forms. It's
Okay,
certain things are no longer eligible
That's right.
for request, and other things, you know, it just evolves.
I remember us talking, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was, about it changing. I couldn't remember if it changed or if it.
I don't think we applied for anything last year. There was nothing that we needed that we were eligible for. It was last year.
It changed, a couple of years ago, they stopped the price of the loan, but they were coming towards the stuff.
Yeah.
And now they're not funding that. We applied for E-rate when we had eligible purchases.
Right.
They were able to apply, or in fact, we have applied for FY25 for some network switches, and for the cabling and the Blue Ridge Branch Library, Visual Library.
Just for those folks who aren't familiar with it, we have some new folks on the board. Can you just give a quick synopsis of what E-rate is?
E-rate is a program that's administered by the agency is the Federal Communications Division from the federal government. That's who administrates the program, that's who the program is promoted by, but it is administrated by USAC, Universal Service Administrative Company. That's what administrates it. And it's basically a program that enables libraries and schools to add and increase their broadband capability. It's way popular for service, for internet service as well. Our internet service is actually funded through the state, and they get their funding from that E-rate as well. And we get network switches and routers and components that are eligible for that from that program.
Doesn't some of that E-rate money come in from that little tax we see on
Yes.
our phone bill, that kind of thing? You wonder.
It's administrated at USAC, Universal Service Administration.
Yeah. So when you see your bill and you see that little charge on there for $1 and something, you wonder what the heck is that? And you just keep moving because you don't have time to think about it. That goes into some fund and we get a little piece of it sometimes. Okay. See Stephanie, that was
You Stephanie started off.
it's a good thing you asked that question. Was there any other questions or concerns about the budget?
The committee unanimously voted to approve it, and to the full board to approve.
Okay. Elizabeth is present by phone today. Are you still there, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Okay, so it comes from the committee. It doesn't need a second. If we don't have any discussion, we'll put it up for a vote. Anybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Okay. It passes unanimously here as well.
Good. And the next was request to use the contingency fund. I think it's $50,000 to cover the difference between the budget amount, the actual cost of the UPS emergency power supplies generated for grid range. And $27,000 to cover the purchase of password manager. It was something called YubiKey. They had a lot of people attempted to reach our firewall. So this is like a two-step identification for passwords.
Isn't that, supposed to be uninterruptible power supply? It says universal here, but it's supposed to be uninterruptible. This is the battery backup, basically.
I've heard that.
Okay. And
And how'd you say that again now? YubiKey? Yeah.
if that's incorrect.
That was a new one, yeah, that was, so as I understand it, the YubiKeys is something that, the county has already, put on their systems, as a, firewall, and, it keeps bad actors from getting in and taking over our.
Yeah, most of us have it like on our banking where it calls your phone and make sure it's you, and then you call it and they give you a code. You put that code in and it goes through.
Multi-factor identification kind of.
This is what this is. Two-step.
Gary's smiling, hopefully like half of what we just said was true, but, yeah, it's another form of MFA.
Does anybody have any questions, regarding that for the, you have anything to add to that as far as, what you guys?
No, sir, that's pretty close, so I think it covers it.
All right.
My son would be proud of me.
Is he in computers?
Yeah, he's in.
Okay.
Do we know why there's a $50,000 difference between the budgeted amount and the actual cost? Like why that was?
Jerry, can you address that?
When we started this program, or when we planned this for our current technology plan, that was 3 years ago. So these prices got acquired 3 years ago. So by the time we started implementing this, the rear project was going with that.
But I think we'll own this. Once we purchase this, we'll own this, and we get updates on it at no charge too. It ain't something we'll be renting from somebody like Microsoft.
If we get updates on something with no charge, that'd be the first time I've ever heard of that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I asked that question and he said yes.
That'd be nice. I mean, until Microsoft buys them out. Okay, is there any other questions about the request for use of contingency funds to take care of that situation? All right, all in favor of the proposal, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. So the last thing on the agenda is the employment cost.
There were two changes on it. Copy of it. You should have read where the additions were added to the paragraph sentence for each one of those. And I just wanted to clarify the meaning of the statement. It was our discussion of it in our committee meeting. We finally decided on accepting it with the exact changes.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that proposal?
If you look at the red, it'll show the addition that we made to it. And then the other copy show the clean copy.
Okay. No questions or discussion? All right. I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of the changes proposed on the employment cost index policy, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. All right. The next thing up is the Library Materials Committee. Marcia is at my right hand.
Okay, we have 4 books that we have recommendations for you on. That means the appeal means, as you know, just to recap, that a person submitted a request for reconsideration of material, and it went through a review process with the library, and if the person who submitted was not satisfied with the answer they appealed to us. I will say that the library has been working, as far as I know, to bring our collection into compliance with the policies that we passed, the sexually explicit material we passed last year, and the more recent one last month.
I think you had to say the sexually explicit policy we passed last year.
Okay.
Yeah. You just said sexually material we passed last year.
I walk with my feet in my mouth all the time. Just read the newspaper. Anyway, yes, the policy that we passed.
Very good.
Nonetheless, we have 4 appeals. So the first is a book called Closer to Nowhere by Ellen Hopkins. It's in our juvenile collection. The characters are 11 and 12 years old, 6th grade. The person who has objected to this material on the basis that there is drug and alcohol usage discussed, as well as child abuse covered in this book, the subject matters are far too mature for young readers. The library has decided to leave that in the juvenile department, and the committee recommends, in this case, we agreed with the library to leave the book in the juvenile collection.
Just for the benefit of everyone here, remind us what the juvenile age group is.
Okay, that's 0 to 12, and we didn't feel that just because it mentioned drug abuse and alcohol usage, that it wasn't really explicit or sensationalized. It didn't involve the minors in the story. I read all 400 and some odd pages of this book, and I think personally that my vote was because I think it is at the high end of our juvenile collection, maybe 10, 11, 12, and then the lower end of the YA. It could go either way on that score.
YA being young adult.
Young adult. We did not find that it violated policy.
Were there any, in the request for reconsideration, were there any passages excerpted that violated specific portions of the policy?
Well, I think you all got them at the same time. The materials committee got the packets on them. But no, it mentions alcohol, it mentions some other, the characters' parents. One was an alcoholic, the father was abusive, he hurt the boy, but the boy is in a different home now. Actually, the book, I didn't think sensationalized. I can't find any place. It just refers to the adults doing things. And it did have a very redemptive ending, that the boy, regardless of his upbringing, went on to help other people, to better himself, and to use his experience to help other people. So, I don't feel like we can sanitize the world from our kids, and so there are mentions of drug and alcohol abuse, but they weren't making it like it was an acceptable or normal thing, and especially not for children.
Okay, so that was the first book, Closer to Nowhere.
I was going to say I read this book as well, and I feel like it's almost like a modern day Oliver Twist. There's some things in it that might be for, more mature 10, 11, 12, 13, but nothing in it that would be any different than reading that text.
Thank you. Nice to have a comparison. Okay, second book, yeah. Just to be.
Vote on this?
The committee. Oh, you're right. The committee came to us with the proposal that we leave it in place.
In the juvenile collection, yes.
I see. Right. So we'll go ahead and vote. Do we, go with the committee's recommendation or do something different? All in favor of adopting the committee's recommendation to leave? To leave the book where it is, say aye. All opposed? All opposed? Okay, so closer to nowhere stays where it is, and, we're on to the, second book. Go ahead.
Okay, I have Rick by Alex Gino for the second book. It has an audience of grades 3 through 7. It is in our juvenile section. I will make note that my library ruled on this book before we had passed the policy that we just recently passed concerning gender identity. So the person objects to this book, that it was inappropriate for the age of the readers in the juvenile section who do not have the emotional development, the brain and intellectual development to decipher its themes, and it includes a Q&A regarding pronouns and gender identity issues in the back. As per the policy we recently passed, so the person requests that it be moved to our parent early childhood section or to our YA section. The committee, as per policy that we just recently passed, that says, library recognizes parents, legal guardians, primary source of education for their children, have the fundamental right and responsibility to direct the upbringing and education of children under their care, including issues of moral, social, physical, civic, and spiritual development. To that end, materials targeting audiences aged 0 to 12, in which the illustrations, themes, or storylines affirm, portray, or discuss changing the appearance of a minor's gender in ways inconsistent with biological sex, will be located in the parenting and early childhood section. Rick, one of the main characters, is not a transgender child, but the book does discuss ways to have alternative pronouns, sexual identity, and Q&A in the back with resources. Fits one of our qualifications for the parent early childhood education called bibliotherapy, resources for adults. The committee recommends, as per policy, this book be moved to the parent early childhood section.
Okay. Does anybody have a chance to read the book, understand what the situation is?
Yeah, when I read the book, I felt like it was targeting ages 12 and up. The youngest characters in the book are 12. There are characters in the book that are like 7th and 8th grade as well. The main character is 12. There were no characters younger than 12 in the book. So I would move that this be put in the young adult section. I think it fits more in the young adult collection than the PEC collection.
Okay. So the committee's recommendation is that it be put into the PEC section per policy that we passed recently. Okay. So we have to vote on that, and I guess you could, if the vote is not in favor of that, then you can make your motion to that.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, per discussion, as we discuss it, I don't think anybody else has any thoughts on it. I thought I thought the age targeting was 12 and up. There were no characters younger than 12 in there, so it's kind of, the main character, I believe, is 12 in the book, so it's kind of right at that borderline of 0 to 12 or 12 and up. But it's a middle school book, it's not an elementary school book, and I feel like it's more for the young adult audience, for that middle school age.
Didn't our policy say, that we just recently passed, that if there was any discussion of gender identity changes and that kind of thing, that it would be put in the PEC section?
If it targeted ages 0 to 12.
Okay. I was thinking it was.
I think it was more definitely more towards juvenile collection, not the young adult.
Just do it.
And as the person that requested it, that so we should consider young adult or PEC. I feel like this would be more fit for our young adult collection than our PEC.
When you started your discussion of that book, you said that the book was targeting, what did you say?
As per publisher, the target is grades 3 through 7.
That's what I was gonna ask, is where did you get that in? You said the publisher says it's grades 3 through 7. Your point is that it doesn't appear that grades 3.
Yeah, all the characters in their middle school.
Yeah.
Well, they're just going into middle school.
Yeah, except for the upperclassmen that are in the club as well, but there's some 7th and 8th graders in the club.
So take the publisher at their word that they're aimed at the grades 3 through 7, I guess.
Again, that kind of straddles our juvenile and young adult, like 3 through 7 is, some of that's juvenile, some of it all, so.
Right? Exactly.
Put it in young adult.
I guess we'll handle the committee's recommendation first, and since we have some dissent with that, let's vote. Everybody who's in favor.
I just have a question. I'm trying to understand. So beyond the target audience piece, this is the committee's vote was that this does not line up with the address. I'm saying back what I heard, pronouns are addressed inconsistent with biological sex for the purpose of affirming gender transitioning. Is that where the book is in violation of policy?
To some extent, and it also has the resources in the back that fit our bibliotherapy, where the parent section resource children can get information on changing their biological sex.
So are there so we're saying that it's the resource piece that it's affirming?
No, it's also discussed, it's a 12-year-old, that's in our policy. So we're talking about a 12-year-old, and there are pronouns, there are discussions of what the sexual preferences could be.
They also introduce Melissa George from the last book into this and discuss her changing her gender. So you're introduced to a transgender character, teenagers, these young children. So per policy is stated, anything that discussed changing your gender of a minor, it should be a PEC section.
Right.
So there are characters in addition to.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Like, you're saying that it affirms gender transition here? I just want the record to be clear about, because there's been questions in the past about why these decisions are made. I think we can deal with a lot of that by tying it specifically to, hey, this is the issue in the policy, because I think sometimes the discussion becomes a little bit murky around that. I get what thank you, that's helpful. I think our policy doesn't say if something discusses gender transitioning, we narrowed that substantially, so I want to make sure that we're staying within the guidelines of what we talked about, not creating new policy on the fly, unintentionally. That's all, thank you.
Yeah, in keeping with what you just said, the overriding principle that we had was that parents should be in charge of talking to their kids about these issues. And with regard to what you said about the what do you call it?
Bibliotherapy.
Bibliotherapy. And what you mean by that is that in the back of the book, it's got the instructions of how you can get in touch with somebody.
I ask Ben if I'm misdefining it.
Well, bibliotherapy is when books are used to help instruct or inform. And so it's actually, if you want to label that a parental thing, but it gives an opportunity to parents to read and introduce the book with the child.
Okay. And if we put that in the parent section, then the parent can decide whether to introduce this gender transition therapy to their children. But if we leave it in the section that it is now, the child can pick it up, read the book that a parent doesn't know anything about, and could basically it's a how-to with regard to gender transition, help and that kind of thing in the book. So it's that we want parents to be the ones to bring that up, not that, we don't want the library to be the source of that information for children, unless the parents prove it first.
No, I get that. My questions were,
I'm with you.
we knew where we were tying in, so we don't have a,
Yeah.
and I think it's an important distinguishing between the last book that we left, that maybe has some themes that parents would say, well, my kid shouldn't be reading about that either, and it's like, well, this is what the policy says.
And the big difference is like exactly saying, you know, we have the policy.
Right, it's a different topic.
With regard to gender transition, the parents are gonna be the ones that bring that up, not the library.
Right.
Hopefully.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks for making that clear. Okay, so do we have any other, discussion about this particular book? So the recommendation of the juvenile section and into the parent and early childhood section of the adult section. All right, we'll vote on that. Everybody in favor of the committee's recommendation, raise your hand. Everybody? Good. And everybody who's opposed to the committee's recommendation, raise your hand. Okay. We have 3 opposed. Okay. And I know you're opposed to the committee's recommendation, but just for the record, Brian, you've already made it clear that you're in favor of just moving it into the young adult. Is that what the other 2 of you? Young adult. Young adult as well? Okay. All right. Thank you. The third book.
Okay. Flamer.
We just finished Flamer, didn't we?
No.
We did it out of order, sorry.
Oh.
My bad.
I have Flamer by Corrado. It's in our young adult section. Because it's a graphic novel, it's numbered as nonfiction. Is that how it's classified? But it's in the young adult. This book, as I said, is graphic novel, so it has pictures as well. The person objecting to this book has requested it be moved to adult, but also questioned the buying of it in the first place. They base their objections, they included, and you all should have originally, when these packets went out, seen some of the pictures, but I have more if anyone needs to see anything to make their vote. This book has, I'm reading from the summary of the person who requested this. Many sexually explicit scenes in the book, which include masturbation, viewing pornography, cross-dressing, naked boys showering, and trying to force a young boy to drink other boys' semen. The book also depicts a boy from an abusive household, and it has a scene where he puts a knife on his wrist in an imagined suicide attempt. And as I said, there are many references here, and if anyone needs to see more pictures, the book is violates. We felt the Materials Committee, not with this book, has recommended moving it to adult based on the explicit, let me see, that's in our young adult to adult, let me see here, young adult, based on materials that contain graphic depictions or descriptions of rape or pedophilia, graphic sexual depictions or descriptions. For the purpose of this policy, material is considered graphic if a person applying contemporary community standards relating to the depiction or description of sexual conduct would find that portion of materials appeals to the prurient interest, and material can be considered gratuitous sex because it involves descriptions or depictions of carnal detail in a sexual act or encounter. We recommended moving into adults.
Okay, so this is different from the policy that was recently changed or added regarding gender transition. This is in keeping with the policy that we've had in place for quite a while regarding the content of the books in the young adult section.
Right.
All right, so is there any discussion about this?
Yes, a couple of questions. The book contains significant vulgarities in it. Was that primarily materials committee's recommendation based on that? A lot of, I don't think there was any graphic sex depicted in the book. There were some things alluded to, but it seemed like it was mainly just vulgarities, and a lot of the sexual content was more sexual innuendo and teasing and jokes versus actual graphic sexual depictions. And so, you know, as to just wanted to kind of define how this policy is applied and stuff. I was kind of wondering what the materials committee's discussion was.
We didn't have a lot of discussion because everybody thought this really was a violation of, if I pass pictures around, I would suspect that community standards would be jarred and not think that this was appropriate material. That's how we felt. You may not feel that way, I don't know.
Currently, this book is in the section that is from age 13 to 18.
Right.
So is there, just, again, I'm looking at stuff that we had that I looked at before, but also, I'm assuming you said you read a portion of it that talked about, so we're saying that there's explicit descriptions of sexual acts, and then we define that includes masturbation in that definition. Is that what we're saying? This violates policy. Those are the policy violations in this book.
We felt that it violated policy based on sexual, I mean, I don't know how explicit anyone wants us to get, but it is suggested and crude and vulgar, I agree, and maybe some would pass it off as boys that can't do these things, but the book was relentless in promoting that kind of an imagery and crudeness, and so that's what we felt. It violated our policy.
So this would be moved into the adult graphic novel section.
Yes,
An adult.
that was our recommendation.
Okay. All right, so any more discussion? We vote? Let's vote.
Excuse me, I would vote would be whether to keep it in the young adult or go to the adult section, right?
No, the vote is to whether to accept the committee's recommendation that it be moved out of the young adult and into the adult section.
All right.
It's a little bit different what you just said, but it has the same thing. But we're voting on whether to accept the committee's recommendation to move it to the adult section.
Is the policy, is the idea, so the current policy is that this would be moved to PEC. Is the idea that this like is an instructive book?
It's not moved into the PEC.
This is under the graphic sexual content policy, right?
This is
Not that.
Yeah, this is different from the
No, I got it.
identity. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're good. So we're already, I got it.
My question, are this is based more on the specific scenes in the book, not just on like the vulgarity of the language included, but on the specific scenes in the book around masturbation that would violate that policy, correct?
I guess anyone else on the committee want to weigh in with Brian?
What's the actual policy? Where can we find it?
I mean, what it says is materials that contain the following will not be included in the young adult collection. And the two categories are graphic depictions or descriptions of rape or pedophilia, which so far I don't think anybody is alleging that we're in that category. I think the one that's applicable was number 2, graphic sexual depictions or descriptions, and then it's that paragraph Marcia read that talks about defining what is graphic.
Yeah, just so everybody will know, I asked Marcia when she came today to give the committee's recommendation and to quote chapter and verse from our policies for each one as to what it violated, because there's been some misreporting as to why we're doing what we're doing, as Joe pointed out a minute ago, just so that there's no question about why we're doing what we're doing. If we have a policy, if we find that the book violates the policy, then we make a recommendation based on what our policy is. And so, to your point, Gene, that is the section.
I mean, if anybody, look, I certainly probably don't want my kids reading this book, but it would be helpful if somebody's got some material that, or can call out some sections that violate this policy, because I don't see in anything I've got, which I don't have the whole book in front of me, graphic sexual depictions or descriptions. No, I'm not saying they aren't in there. I'm just asking if somebody can, and it's not really fun to do this in a public meeting, but here we are, so.
I think there's one, it talks about a lot about oral sex, about sucking. Male genitalia was definitely in there with the graphic use of the words to describe it. There's also one where there's an adult male with a boy, and he makes a comment saying, oops, in the same scene as the child. You know, and there's also a lot of disparaging comments, calling someone a gay fat fuck. I just don't see how that has, like, why do I want a young adult looking at that? And I think a bigger discussion is how we come up with the books themselves into our library. Mm-hmm. So, to Brian's point, no, I didn't see any actual, because it's a graphic novel, I didn't see the actual, like, sexual acts occurring. And it's the definition of the word graphic. Does that mean it has to be actual scene, or can it be the language?
Verbally graphic.
Correct. So, because there's a lot of that. There's a lot of talking about, I mean, some of it is some of the kids' stuff being boys, but some of it, to me, goes beyond that because of the language that's being used, as opposed to the actual scene of the act that's occurring.
That's helpful.
Yeah. And I think for me personally, when we voted on this, when I saw the one about the adult male being in the same scene with the child, there's a lot of, we didn't come out and say it, but boy, that was real close to the line of, like, the boy and the adult somehow engaging in a sexual act.
So I think this is helpful, because that to me seems to connect with, in policy, what we define as graphic material. The last two sentences of that material, it can be considered gratuitous sex, and then we say it's considered gratuitous because it involves descriptions or depictions of carnal detail of a sexual act or encounter. I think that's probably where we're landing, if I'm hearing this correctly. Is that accurate? Getting lots of head nods. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Okay. All those in favor of the committee's recommendation to move it to the adult section, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, I think it's unanimous.
Thanks, Gene, for your help on that.
Thanks for,
You had to be the lamb for the slaughter, sorry.
I taught middle school.
That's kind of the question I was asking, right? Like, where's that? That's really helpful.
Ready for the last one?
Please.
One more. We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. It's in our young adult section. The book is objected to. because it contains explicit sexual content, rape, suicide, violence, obscene language. The person also says it should be moved to the adult section and have a warning of explicit contents, much like TV shows, so parents have an idea of what is inside. The person who objected to this material did include excerpts from a website that has book reviews on it, and excerpts talking about a lot of sexual. I read all 450 pages of this book, by the way, so I would like to say I totally agreed with the committee's recommendation to move this book out of young adult. They talk about effing under the baby grand and running naked through the house and pushing each other on, and teenage rape in the bleachers and in the bathrooms. And I read it all hoping I would come to some sort of a ending that had, at the end, never justified the means. But the ending of the book was like, life stinks, but you might as well live it anyway.
Uplifting.
So anyway, but based on our policy, nonetheless of my personal opinion, that based on our policy for young adult sexually explicit material, if you need me to read it again, I will, but I think we've read it a couple times. Graphic descriptions, sexual depictions or descriptions, and violation of community standards, those, we recommended moving this book to the adult.
Okay, so the committee has a recommendation. She's made it clear what policy the book violates. And so the committee is making the recommendation that the book be moved from the young adult section to the adult section.
Correct.
Okay? Anybody have any discussion about this one?
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. I think most of the sections that were included in the review and the appeal, I think the vast majority of these do not conflict with our policy. But there are, so there's a section in there about rape. I think that's explicit in our policy. A couple of graphic scenes as well. But I say most of the sections that were pulled out in that appeal do not conflict with our policy.
And that the person that filed the appeal quoted sections that don't violate our policy, but there are sections in the book that do violate our policy that weren't mentioned by the person that filed the appeal.
Yeah, I mean, they included, I think, the section already in here. I think that's explicit in our policy. And if you go, I think a lot of the sections that they pulled out, a lot of sections in the book do not violate our policy.
Well, they did give examples of sections that do violate our policy, and since I read the whole thing, I found lots of others that I will spare you from, but this is representative.
Okay. All right, so the committee's recommendation is that we move the book from the young adult to the adult section for the reasons of violating the policy that were given. Anybody have any questions about that anymore? Before we vote? Okay, all in favor of moving the book to the adult section, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have the executive director's report.
I'd like to call on Ryan Morrison, our Access and Discovery Manager, Director, to report on some adult programming we recently had and some that are coming up.
I just wanted to share a little bit of information about our adult programming. We've had some great attendance at some of our recent library events for adults, including a number of events on gardening and sustainability. As an example, the Pelham Road Branch Library hosted a plant swap and seed library pop-up event on Saturday, March 16th. Approximately 80 people attended, many of them bringing seeds, plant clippings, and fully grown plants of their own to swap or leave for other attendees to take. The branch staff also made seed packets available for library card holders to take, which were obtained from the seed library that is hosted at the Leah branch of our library system. As a reminder, the seed library is a collaborative initiative between our library system and the Greenville County Soil and Water Conservation District, which makes heirloom food, flower, and native plant seeds ready for planting, available to library card holders who visit the Leah branch and the bookmobile. We're very grateful to the Soil and Water Conservation District for their considerable support for that initiative. The Simpsonville Branch Library will also host a similar event on Saturday, April 6th, and we're hoping to have a great turnout similar to that one, similar to the one that we recently experienced at the Pelham Road Branch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd also like to Karen Holland here now on our youth services manager. She's going to report on some youth services programming.
Is this the same Karen Allen that's got 30 years of service?
Yes.
You got your certificate right on top of you? How about that? 30 years. Thank you for your service.
So we've also been busy with programs this year since January. We held 241 programs for kids and teens. In January, we had 9,443 attendees. In February, we had 268 programs with over 11,000 attendees. We had a February Lollipops concert at 2 locations, and that's with the Greenville Symphony with over 300 attendees. And in March, we had Storytime Ballet, 2 performances, and that's with International Ballet. And there were almost 500 attendees for that. And then we had a Barbie party on Friday with over 200 attendees. Really busy.
Did I miss that?
Karen, can I ask you a question? Is there anything resource-wise that limits, I mean, what's the biggest constraint on youth programming right now?
I would say the biggest constraint is the meeting room size. We have to cap a lot of programs because of like.
Yeah.
That's the branches, mainly. We got plenty of room here. Yeah.
That makes sense.
I would be glad to give it to you. I can sign it. I'll take a sign here and sticker off of it. Thank you.
Now I'd just like to call your attention to the new RAD card related to our download and streaming services, Hoopla, Living, and Freegal Music. That's all I have.
Freegal Music. Right. Okay. We have some people signed up to speak. First person is Brent Cox. Mr. Cox, I would remind you that we can give everybody 3 minutes. And as soon as I get my stopwatch started here, we'll crank it up.
Good afternoon. My name is Brent Cox, and I am openly gay from Greenville, South Carolina, USA. He, him, his. Thank you to our LGBT+ community, especially everyone with FLAG, P-Flag Greenville, Furman University, and all our LGBTQ allies and supporters who won't stand for prejudice, discrimination, hate, and bullying at our library. Thank you to our LGBTQ+ friendly library staff who are doing a wonderful job during this difficult time at our library. Book banning is wrong. When people ban books, they are banning art, artwork, art. We need art and artists with the imaginations to help us try to understand things that are often beyond the realms of our own imaginations. Again, we need art and artists with the imaginations to help us try to understand things that are often beyond the realms of our own imaginations. To be an artist, one has an imagination that can imagine the reality and wonder of being homosexual, being bisexual, being transgender, being LGBTQ+. Artists can imagine what life must be like for people who are LGBTQ+. As I am an artist, I know that people who are transgender, especially youth, are pure magic. Our LGBTQ+ community includes people of all skin tones, ethnicities, races, nationalities, ages, religions, capabilities, people throughout all history, all people. We teach our children in our nation the Pledge of Allegiance with the words liberty and justice for all. All children need to be represented in our youth section in our public library. All people, including LGBTQ+ people, and especially our LGBTQ+ youth, need and deserve to be represented in our library with books, with art. Thank you.
Thank you. The second person is Lauren Grant.
Good afternoon. I've spoken here a couple of times before, and you may recall from my previous comments that I'm a local business owner, a parent of young children, a huge fan of libraries and librarians as a former librarian myself, and of our county library specifically as a frequent user. In my previous comments, I've asked the board and Ms. James to share the good stuff with us and give the library staff the opportunity to present to the board and to the public on their great work. I see you doing that. Thank you, and I ask you to keep working to make staff presentations about the successes of the library's products and services a robust part of this meeting. As I've done before, I'd like to take some time here to talk about the good stuff. Librarians and library staff in a public library setting such as this system are first and foremost public servants. Of all of the library careers that they could have chosen, they've chosen this one of public service. To be great at their jobs, which I believe our library staff are, they devote themselves to learning about the communities that they serve. They read local papers, feeds, and blogs, they attend community events, they talk to their patrons and neighbors, they fully immerse themselves in what is current in their community. With this knowledge of their community, combined with their rigorous professional training, they work hard to create collections, programs, and services in a sense of place that is accessible to their entire community. Librarians are trained to select materials for their collection without regard to their own personal beliefs or preferences. They are trained to understand their community, as I just said, monitor patron requests, study bestseller lists. You talked about, let's talk about the process of how things get into our collection, observe usage, read reviews from a variety of authoritative sources when determining what materials to select. This means that they may select materials for a public library collection that they would never choose for themselves or their family, that have points of view that differ from their own personal, moral, ethical, or religious beliefs. I'm not privy to the specific decisions that happen in our library system, but let me just take a hypothetical. A librarian might not want for themselves or their family to read a romance novel, a book about World War II bomber pilots, a children's book about Noah's Ark, but even so, this well-trained and dedicated public servant may still pick these books for a public library's collection because of all the reasons that I said before. Perhaps the request outnumbered typical requests, they were heralded by reviews, and made many bestseller lists. Whether or not the librarian likes or agrees with them, they assess that they are important for the library's collection, for the community that they serve. And this is the good stuff. Librarians and library staff are trained to value ideas and information without judgment. In doing so, they work on the front lines of helping our communities to thrive. Please continue to bring your library staff here and let them tell us about the hard work that they do to provide this excellent public service. Thank you.
Thank you. Susanna Sarabia.
Hello, members of the board. Thank you for being proactive in addressing the books that have been requested for removal. When my friend was at the board meeting in last February, she asked some questions that concerns books we as taxpayers are paying for. Again, the questions are, who are the vendors that you purchase books from? Who in the library system is assigned to the purchasing of these books? Jarvis the process, such as are these books recommended, from whom and where? Are people from the community allowed to purchase books for placement on the shelves? Who makes the final decision concerning books purchasing placement? I'm telling you, kids don't learn if it's a sick adult trying to pervert them. So even they may sound that they're kind and nice librarians or such a nice individuals. When they violate a child's life, they come against God. Thank you.
Thank you. The fourth person is Greg Summers.
Good afternoon. I'm here to express my gratitude to each of you for your leadership and for the wisdom that you've demonstrated through these very sensitive and important issues of the content of the materials that are available to our community. Thank you so much for taking the time and dealing with all the pressures of handling the situation. I'm pleased with the policy that was approved last month, which in its wisdom acknowledges that the parents and guardians are the primary authority for determining the content of materials for their children. So thank you for that. I understand that this is a situation that you probably didn't expect to have to deal with when you joined the library board, and that the type of materials that that the library is now receiving, because they've become mainstream, are very challenging. So I appreciate your willingness to stand up and make policies that are effective in addressing these issues. I do want to say that, I believe that some of these materials should not be in the library system at all. But I understand that in the litigious society that we're now living in, sometimes we have to compromise by moving them to another section, and so I understand that. So I'm here joyfully today to commend you for your work. Proverbs 29:2 says that when the righteous rule, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people moan. And finally, I appreciate that this governing body acknowledges the need for prayer, and I believe that the positive results in these policies that you've enacted are an answer to those prayers. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our final person who signed up. So,
I have a question before, just related to the book review policy. Maybe more of a suggestion. I don't know if materials is already looking at it, but our ratio of what the board is doing versus what we're getting seems to be pretty out of whack. And I mean, I think some of this stuff is not super clear, so I think like we had one today that was.
What do you mean the ratio is out of whack?
We're overturning a lot of the decisions, and to me, which is not necessarily a problem. I think what I'm concerned about is some of these are pretty clear, like clearly says if there's graphic depictions of sex, like the policy tells you what to do. And we had at least one today that had a very clear graphic depiction of sex. And I'm a little concerned that, I don't know if we need better training on the policy or what, because that to me, I understand it could still be appealed to the board, that's not in anybody's control, but in these cases, we're seeing stuff left that clearly violates the policy. And that really is consuming board time, energy, and effort that should not be. That's the reason we have multi-level policy in place, and we're losing the benefit of that because it's not being followed. So it's more just an observation. I think there are, like we had one today, I think it was very unclear until I was unclear on it, and until Gene elucidated that a little bit. That stuff is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the ones that are like, hey, they were having sex, and it's like, well, clearly the policy says it's a graphic sexual act. Just, I don't know, I'm not proposing a solution, I just think we need to figure that out and fix something that's not working.
And I think that what may be missing from your, that I had the same question in some way, but I understand that there's been quite a few books that have been challenged by the public that have not made it to the appeals process because the person that challenged the book was in fact correct, and the staff, when it was brought to their attention, they moved it to the appropriate section without our having to get involved.
Yeah.
These are 4 that didn't get moved before they made it to an appeal, but there's quite a bit, I think, that have been pointed out that
So you're saying we may be doing better than it appears.
the ratio is a lot better than
That's
it
okay.
is, yeah.
And even if that's something we share internally, that might be helpful to know. Like,
Yeah, I was on your same guideline, I was gonna ask her maybe for
got it.
see what's going on. Yeah.
I think these appeals started before the policy too.
That also, yeah.
One of them was.
Clearly had one that, that helps. All right. Great, thanks for clarifying it.
We are challenged by interpreting the policy, and if an act didn't happen, it wasn't particularly described, it was referenced. The word rape was used, but no rape was described. But that's an example of, so we're struggling to interpret the policy as you are, and so that's all I can say.
This is not me like throwing stone, I mean, that's helpful explanation, it's really just understanding, this is not like, oh, people aren't doing their job, or somebody needs to be fired, I mean, none of that, it's more, if we are not giving the people that are charged with carrying out the policy, the tools that they need, then we need to solve that, that's all I'm saying. And sounds like maybe we're actually doing a better job than I realized, which just means I need to be solved and they're doing fine, we need to leave them alone, so.
And I think
that's all I was after.
I would say I'm appreciative of the public too, because they're doing the work of mass reviewers, and if they find something, they bring it to our attention, because nobody in here has read all the books, so.
No, that's part of, I mean, that's part of the other piece I'm getting. It's a big lift, it's gonna be a big lift for us to read 4 to 6 books a month on top of, like, the things that we actually wanna read, so. But we have a responsibility to do that well, and I just wanna make sure that we're.
14 more requests came in this past Friday.
Yeah.
We're just starting off.
That's kind of the, I mean, I knew there was more coming, so that's.
Well, part of on the form it says, did you read the whole book? They asked the person that was challenging the book, did you read the whole book? And I'm of the opinion that if there is a violation of our policy, there's a violation of our policy. I don't care if it's got the New Testament on both sides of it. It's there's nothing redeeming about it after it violates our policy. So I don't think you have to read the whole book to once you find a violative section, then that means it moves to a different section. And in keeping with the first speaker, Brent, I believe is the name. I'm sorry, I don't remember your last name. Then nobody's banned any books here. There's not been any banning of books. The books haven't left the library, to my knowledge. books have been moved to a different section, based on what we call the section. If we have a section that's juvenile, then we expect that the book will be in the juvenile section if it is appropriate for juveniles to see.
Well, banishing a book to a section that makes it difficult where it's not easily accessible, and when people cannot see it, that is a form of banning.
Now, it's as accessible as any other book in here. It's just not accessible to juveniles, which we've always had. That's the reason we don't have Playboy magazines in the juvenile section, okay, to be simplistic about it. So by moving the book to where it should be is in no way banning the book. Banishing, if you're shortening banishing to make it a ban, then it might explain why you're saying that. But I'm just kind of tired of people telling me that I'm banning books. I haven't banned a book.
Well, I'm tired of the prejudice and discrimination as well, and when I say book banning is wrong, that is a statement. Book banning is wrong.
Book banning is wrong. I would find that fine. If we had been banning books around here, then I would take that criticism, but that's not what we've been doing. So we're just trying to. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask you that you said that it's restricted in juvenile or juvenile? Is that only the parents signing up for a restricted card?
That's true.
Parents can sign their children up for a restricted juvenile card.
Yeah, what you mean by that is that if a parent decides that the child does not need to be restricted to the juvenile section, that they have an unrestricted juvenile card, then they can get any book from any section in the library. And so they don't have to flip through the Dr. Seuss books hoping to find something that would be a problem. They can find it anywhere they want to by looking it up on the library's computer. It's just going to take them to a shelf and a section, just like it will if it was in the children's section. So I just don't get the book banning problem.
Excuse me, I made a statement that book banning is wrong. I did not even make a statement with the board, even in the sentence.
I understand. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
So for you to take that personally is very interesting.
Okay.
That tells us.
It's been said quite a bit, when you haven't been here, that by moving books, we're banning books.
Oh, I've been here for over a year, so I've been here. I've been here.
Well, and then you've heard people say that we're banning books. I mean,
I've heard of a lot of things I don't like.
Why don't you
I've
just
heard a
move
lot.
all of those? Move all of those. Why not just that?
So I'll just renew my request, if we can get some data on, and I know nobody wants to collect it, but how many books have been challenged, and then how many of those challenges were reversed by the board in total, not just how many came to the board, but how many of the total. I think that would help us understand if what we were trying to do is working.
Yeah.
And if it's not working, we can go back to drawing board and figure it out.
well, that's going to be a moving target,
Right, that's what I'm thinking, we're gonna have to update it regularly, and we're pretty early on, but I think it would be easier if we start now than getting a lot of books in and then trying to go back and recreate the wheel. That's really.
I can provide an update to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, one of the things I was talking to somebody about was that since we tend to get a lot of public reaction and personal complaints, I get them in the produce section of the grocery store. For moving books or not moving books or whatever, I would like to see all of the requests for reconsideration. I think it's a misnomer of the form, but it's really a request for consideration. Where the public submits one, I would like to know what book is being considered, so that I'm not blindsided by somebody asking me why we didn't do thus and so with it. I got no idea, unless it makes it here for what we're doing now.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I get on both sides of the issue.
Exactly.
People are like, you're moving too many, some people are like, you're not moving enough, and I'm like, I didn't even know the book you're talking about was in the process.
So you want a list of titles regardless of whether or not they make it to you for an appeal, or you just want numbers?
Me personally, numbers are fine, because I feel like that's the whole point of the board. I don't think I should have to know about every single book that's in the process. It's not, I mean, somebody else wants to know about it, great, but that, to me, that's why we have a process, is so the board doesn't have to be in the middle of it. I think Alan may want to know the titles, but I was just asking for general numbers, and that's again, so we know if the process is working, not, so I need to know if, you know, Billy goes to the park is what the status is. That feels a little bit micromanaging to me, but.
No, I want to know, if somebody files a reconsideration request, I'd like to know what it is. I mean, and it may be just a matter of taking whenever they come in, just email them to me.
Does everybody want numbers or titles or both?
And I'll tell you the reason for that. There's been a lot of people that said they submitted requests and they never heard anything back. And I think by sending it to the board, there would be accountability. I'm not saying that you guys didn't do what you're supposed to do, but I would then be able to say, well, I never saw your request.
Well, the process is that it only comes to the board if it's appealed.
I understand that. I'm saying when it comes in the front door, I'd like to see it. Because that's the one, that's the hot button that I'm getting dinged on all the time. So if I'm gonna get, I'd like to be informed.
I mean, what we could do is, and this would be outside the scope of like traditional audit procedures, but we might be able to add like what they call agreed upon procedures, which is basically, normally when you hire an auditor, you don't tell the auditor what to do. That would kind of be a problem. But you can hire auditors to do specific test work, and you tell them what you want to test. So we could tell the auditor, we want to test this process, and they go through and they'll pick a sample and they'll say, show me, they just pull out the checklist, show me when it came in, look at the dates, they go and check it all off. That may be one idea. I'm not saying we need to do that, but that might be helpful. We got a couple months before the auditors come, and that might be something to do 4, 5, 6 months from now, when they come to test this out too. That way we don't, again, have to monitor it. We can test the process. If the process is working, great. If it's not working, we fix it.
Well, we're tracking everything, so I can provide
That's great.
all the details.
I'm more suggesting that from the again, that's not, doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong, but it puts a stamp of approval on it, and it's really a protection for our team as much as it is, you know, somebody snooping around for the bad stuff, because we can say, hey, we had an independent third process, and they said that 99.99% of the time they're right on target, so it'll probably be 100%. I think that's very, very valuable, and probably something worth us paying for. And it also, again, helps our team, because they can say, hey, like, it's not just us saying we're doing a good job, which I'm sure they are.
Okay, board's good?